Pokemon types, a basic feature of the series that everyone should know about. For the one idiot who for some reason doesn't understand what they are, types are basically classifications for Pokemon and moves. They work like rock, paper, scissors, being weak to a type and being strong against another. But that's not enough, because types are more like if you were to take rock, paper, scissors and make it as overly complicated as possible. Currently there are 18 types, and today I'm going to praise and nitpick them as much as I can. I could have made this like a top 18 Pokemon types, but I don't want to plagiarize Yana. I'm not that unoriginal. But anyways, let's get on with the actual video. Oh yeah, and I'm not including question mark, bird or shadow types. I'm sorry. How generic. Normal is a very vanilla type, but that's kind of a given. I mean, it is called the normal type. This is the second most common type in the series, with 109 Pokemon in total. Defensively, it does only have one weakness, which is to fighting, and it's even immune to ghosts, but it packs no resistances. Back in the early days, powerful fighting type moves were very uncommon, but now there are tons of them, making normal worse than it used to be. Offensively, normal is still a mixed bag. Rock and steel resisted, and ghost is immune to it, plus it's not strong against anything. However, don't think that means it's a useless type. Normal types easily have the largest move pools, with over 170 stab moves to choose from and a ton of coverage from other types. It's still the most basic out of any type in the game, but it's not bad or anything. You better have Burn Heal, because now we're talking about Fire. Fire is a type I feel is both overestimated and underestimated. It's very powerful on an offensive level, being strong against Bug, Grass, Ice, and Steel. Defensively, Fire may seem lacking at first, with weaknesses to Water, Ground, and Rock, three very common types, and defenses that are on average, well, average. But it can actually be pretty good in this regard, with the second most amount of resistances of any Pokemon type. Not to mention, Fire types can counter their weaknesses well. Harsh Sunlight is also a lifesaver, buffing stab moves by 50% and nerfing water type attacks by the same percent. Oh, and don't even get me started on the burn status, which not only whittles the opponent away by dealing a set amount of damage every turn, but also having attack. Judging from how much I've praised it, Fire's amazing. However, I wouldn't say it's the best of the best. IGN may have rated it a 7.8 out of 10, but Water deserves much better. Water is like the perfect balance. It works well defensively due to only being weak against Grass and Electric. It also works great offensively, not only having a wide range of stab moves to choose from, but also Ice-type attacks, making Grass much less of a threat. Water type is super effective against Fire, Ground, and Rock, three very common attacking types. It also has an exclusive weather effect in the form of Rain, which buffs the power of Water type attacks by 50% while lowering Fire moves by the same amount. To top it all off, Water is the most common Pokemon type, with 133 sharing it. The only complaint I really have is that it doesn't have a great way of countering its own type or Electric. But aside from that, it's fantastic, and I would be surprised if someone hasn't used at least one water type before. What I'm about to say about this type may be shocking to some. Electric is great on an offensive level since it's strong against water and flying. Because of how common both of these types are, it gives Electric a massive advantage. And even for defending, Electric is useful due to only being weak against ground. But there are many drawbacks. The defenses of Electric types aren't always good, and they probably won't survive many hits. And while being strong against water and flying really helps, Ground is completely immune to electric moves. Electric types on average have shallow move pools. In most cases, all they have to work with are Stab and a couple other examples. I guess I should also mention the Paralysis condition, which halves speed and can prevent the foe from moving at all. It's very easy to pull off, and it's permanent for the battle, so it's often the status condition I have my Pokemon inflict on the foe the most. While Electric is fantastic, its problems hurt it to the point that I feel like you're better off using an Electric-type move rather than an Electric-type Pokemon. Some say Grass is ass, but I call it a masterpiece. That made no sense. Grass is a very weird type. It probably seems weak at first. I mean, come on, they're plants and flowers that are fighting. When it comes to offense, Grass is super effective against Water, Ground, and Rock, three very commonly used types as stated before, but 7 types resisted. And defensively, it doesn't need to worry about Water, Ground, and Electric, but it has the most weaknesses of any type, with 5. By this point, you'd probably just throw the Grass type in the trash if that were possible, but I'm not done. While they're not so great on those levels, when it comes to supporting, they work wondrously. Grow, Aromatherapy, Synthesis, the Spore and Powder moves, Leech Seed, and Giga Drain are just a few examples of good supported moves. Also, even though there's no associated type with it, quite a few sleep-inducing moves are related to Grass. Basically, don't judge it by its Pokemon selection. The Glass Cannon of types, or I guess in this case, the Ice Cannon. Ice is definitely one of the best when it comes to attacking. It's strong against Grass, Ground, Flying, and Dragon. And trust me, there are a lot of great Pokemon that share at least 2 of those types. There's also the Freeze condition, which causes a Pokemon to be unable to move until they thaw out. And in Generation 1, it was impossible to do this naturally. But like I said, Ice is a glass cannon. Ice is weak against fire, steel, fighting, and rock, all of which are commonly used, and it only resists itself. Ice is often considered the worst defensive type for these reasons. It also doesn't help that the hail weather condition isn't as useful as any of the others, only benefiting ice types. Yeah, I doubt many have tried to build a team around hail. If I had to compare Ice to anything, it would be Paula from Earthbound. They're both very strong but very fragile. But while Paula manages to be amazing in her game, Ice suffers a lot from its shortcomings. Not even Klonoa is this underrated. Actually, I take that back. But Poison is still the most underappreciated type in my opinion. A lot of people seem to overlook just how good it can be. I will admit that offensively, Poison is debatably one of the worst. It's only strong against Grass and Fairy, but also Bug in Generation 1. On the other hand, it's one of the best defensively, with 5 resistances and tons of supporting moves. They can take hits really well and proceed to whittle down the opponent with poison damage. Of course, Toxic can be learned by every Pokemon in the game with a few exceptions, but do most of them work as well for defending than Poison types? Well, maybe, but I have to give credit where credit is due to Poison. It just deserves more love, okay? Everybody was Kung Fu fighting. Or at least the fighting types were. Fighting is pure power. It has the most amount of advantages against any other types, with 5, but it also has disadvantages against the same amount. And Ghost strikes the nail in the coffin by being immune to fighting. It may seem like a detriment, but since fighting types typically have high attack, it's not a big loss. Defensively, it has its pros and cons. Bug, Dark, and Rock are good types to resist, but Flying, Psychic, and Fairy are strong against fighting. Luckily, it can counter these weaknesses well, with a lot of fighting types having access to Poison, Rock, or Flying moves. But if you think it's flawed now, it was even worse in the beginning. Psychic was really overpowered in the first generation, and a lot of the best fighting type moves were either rare or had some sort of drawback. To be honest, I feel like fighting is outclassed by other attacking types, so it's not a type I look at too fondly. It's good, but not the most useful. Here we have the metagame's favorite. Ground is an amazing type when it comes to attacking. Seeing how it's strong against electric, fire, poison, rock, and steel, plus it's only resisted by bug and grass, it's no wonder it's used so much in competitive. When it comes to defending, on the other hand, it's a bit risky. Ground types typically have high defense, sure, but they don't always have the greatest of special defense, and their weaknesses are primarily special. I guess on the bright side, it resists poison and rock and is the only type immune to electric. Ground has also benefited from Sandstorm, which I'll be mentioning a lot. But anyway, Sandstorm has multiple effects, but its main effect is that it deals 1/16 of damage to any type other than ground, rock, and steel. Oh yeah, an Earthquake. Earthquake is the best move ever, don't at me. 100 base power, 100% accuracy, no side effects, how could you go wrong? Likewise, how could you go wrong with a ground type? I don't believe I can fly, but I do believe flying can, but that's a given. I'm not sure how to describe flying. It's great, but at the same time, it's not that great. Being strong against grass bug and fighting helps it a bit, but flying types don't always have the best attacking stats. They are very fast, however, meaning they can be decent sweepers. It resists the same types it's strong against, and is immune to the powerful ground type, but its weaknesses to ice, rock, and electric screwed over a little. Stealth rocks do nothing to help either. I say flying is more of a type that works better for a secondary advantage rather than being its own thing. Even Game Freak knows this, because the only pure flying type in the entire franchise is Tornadus. And I guess it's Therian form, but same thing. I don't think Psychic needs any introduction. Everyone and their mom know how powerful this type is. Psychic types usually have very high special attack, special defense, and speed, meaning they can sweep through opponents like no problem. I would argue that Psychic is the best defensive type in the series. While it's only super effective against fighting and poison, the only types that resist it are itself, Steel, and Dark, with Dark being an immunity. They can deal tons of damage to any other type. Unfortunately, they can't take hits as well, since they only resist other Psychic types in fighting, and they're weak to Ghost, Bug, and Dark. However, there are a lot of supported Psychic moves to choose from, so they at least have that going. Psychic was a very unbalanced type in the first generation, with an immunity to Ghost and Bug being pretty underwhelming. The only counter against Psychics were other Psychics. They had to introduce 2 new types in Gold and Silver just to balance Psychic. Yeah, 2. If that doesn't prove how great Psychic was, then I don't know what will.
Don't you bug me with a Caterpie for flying type.
No, stop. Why do you get to talk about bug types? I'm clearly the bug master here.
EJ, how did you even get in this recording?
What? But we're on a Discord call. How could you forget?
Oh yeah. Okay, since you love bug types so much, you get to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do this. The bug type is my personal favorite type in Pokemon, but I won't let that get in the way of how it is. The bug types had a very rough start, especially in Generation 1. Bug was Psychic's only weakness in the game, but the best bug move was Twin Needle, learned only by Beedrill, who was part Poison type. Bug Pokemon did get better treatment as the generations went on, thank goodness. Generation 2 introduced Mega Horn, Gen 4 has Bug Buzz, and my favorite change of all, Generation 7 buffed Leech Life to the point where it's such an amazing move. These moves can seriously hurt Grass, Psychic, and Dark Pokemon. However, Fire, Fighting, Poison, Flying, Ghost, Steel, and Fairy won't be hurt by those types as much. Not to mention, the common Fire, Flying, and Rock type are Bug's weaknesses, giving it a little issues. Once you get past those weaknesses, you'll truly see that Bug is a solid typing.
Too bad it doesn't rock itself. I'll be honest, rock is probably my least favorite type. I mean, it's not horrible, but it has a lot of flaws that put it at the bottom for me. It's meant to be a good defensive type, yet it severely fails at that. Sure, rock types usually have high defense, but it has the most amount of weaknesses typed with grass. Combine that with their typically low special defense and speed, and you have an underwhelming wall. Even offensively it suffers since a lot of rock type moves are inaccurate. That being said, it's still solid in this regard, both figuratively and literally, as it's strong against flying, fire, bug, and ice. If I have anything else positive to say, rock types are immune to sandstorm damage, and their special defense are buffed by 50% during this weather condition, but it still failed at what's supposed to be in the first place. Ghost is very strange. Game Freak seems to do a lot with it, yet at the same time it feels like they don't. Ghost was originally created as a counter to Psychic, but some idiot coded the type wrong, so Ghost did nothing to Psychic. Because of this, it was probably the worst defensive type of the first generation. In Generation 2, they finally gave it the Psychic advantage it deserved, but Dark and Steel are resistant to Ghost. It's like they took one step forward, but 2 steps back. While it may seem lacking offensively, defensively it's much better. It resists Bug and Poison, and it's the only type with 2 immunities, those being Normal and Fighting. Ghost is also immune to being trapped in battle, which is cool. I've already established that Grass is the best supporting type, but Ghost may be in second. There are tons of supporting moves Ghost types have to choose from, and not just from stat. Every Ghost type move has 100% accuracy, so they're unlikely to miss. Ghost is definitely one of the most interesting types Game Freak has created. I just hope they do a little more with it in the future. And here we have another type that was insanely unbalanced. Where do I even begin with Dragon? Dragon types on average have very high base stat totals, around 600 to be exact. But probably so they won't be a massive threat, Dragons are only super effective against other Dragons. That being said, they can still deal a lot of damage with a neutral matchup. On a defensive side, Dragon types do have key resistances to Electric, Grass, Fire, and Water, but they're weak against themselves, Ice, and Fairy. It doesn't help that so many Dragon types are part Flying or Ground. But they do have good HP and defensive stats, meaning they can at least tank those weaknesses well. While there are a limited amount of stat moves, most of them are really powerful. So Dragon was a really overpowered type for a while. And then X and Y came along and introduced Fairy type. Regardless, Dragon is ridiculously good, as long as you're not up against a balloon. It's the Dark Soul of Pokemon, Dark type. Well, not really, I just had to throw in some stupid joke. Dark is similar to Ghost in a few ways. They were both created to counter Psychic, both have an immunity to a type, both are strong against the exact 2 types, and both are adored by edgelords. However, I'd say that Dark is the better offensive type between the 2. Dark types usually have great attack, and tons of good moves to work with, including attacks like Crunch, Night Slash, and Dark Pulse, plus a couple supporting moves like Taunt, Torment, and Embargo. But defensively, Ghost wins this round. Dark has weaknesses to Fighting, Fairy, and Bug, and the first 2 are especially problematic. At least Dark has an immunity to Psychic, which is useful to have. I don't know whether I'd say Ghost or Dark is better than one or the other, but both can work really well together. Steel, why did you have to steal my heart? I'll admit it, Steel is my favorite Pokemon type. It is hands down the best defensive type. Steel types usually have very high defense, but they also have the most amount of resistances of any type with 10. And before Generation 6 it was 11. They're also immune to Poison. Now do you believe me? The only problem are its weaknesses, Fire, Ground, and Fighting, as they're very common attacking types. While Steel isn't as good offensively, it can still be decent. It used to only be strong against Ice and Rock, neither of which are good at taking hits. But now it's super effective against Fairy, which makes it much more useful. Plus Steel Pokemon usually have really high attacks, so why not take advantage of it? And luckily they have a pretty good selection of moves to choose from, both attack-wise and support-wise, both stab and other types. And Steel has benefited from Sandstorm like Rock and Ground. Oh, and my favorite Pokemon is Steel type. Now do you know why I love Steel so much? Don't let the name fool you, Fairy is actually great. In fact, it's a little too great. Fairy Pokemon make for amazing special walls, with them often having high special defense and good special attack. In battle, Fairy is strong against Dark, fighting in the previously overpowered Dragon. Even though Fire, Poison, and Steel resisted, Fairy types have a couple moves to counter them. Defensively, it has a ton of advantages as well as a couple disadvantages. Like I said, Fairy types usually have extremely good special defense, but their weaknesses are Poison and Steel, both of which are primarily physical. Fairy does make up for this by not only resisting Bug, Dark, and Fighting, but also being immune to Dragon. That's pretty unbalanced. I mean, I can understand a resistance, but an immunity? Anyways, Fairy types also have a well-balanced move pool between attack and supporting moves. Now do you think Fairy is bad? Well, they're the exact opposite, and Game Freak should balance it out. So yeah, that's every type that I've praised or nitpicked to death. You should now have an understanding of how good or bad these types are. Although if you're a hardcore Pokemon fan, you're probably disappointed that I just explained all this when you already knew it. So just to make this video worthwhile, here's how I would rank every type from favorite to least favorite. Anyways, I want to thank EJ for talking about Bug type, because otherwise, well, it may have not been as positive. But as always, until next time, this is BlueNin10, and wait, now that I ranked the types, this video ended up being a copy of Yana's. You happy?